Why, in your opinion, would a family leave their large, comfortable and warm home and rush to the street under the harsh cold and its exhausting roar? We can guess it together. The house was subjected to an armed robbery. It is possible that an accident occurred in their home, such as a gas leak, for example, or a fire. We can go further than that, for example, to the presence of a serial killer. Otherwise, this family will be a group of lunatics, nothing else. But allow me to disappoint all your guesses, and warn you from now on, that what we will mention here is not for the weak-hearted at all. So let us begin. In March 1990, on a normal day like any other, 16-year-old Maria Estefania Gutierrez woke up to go to school. Maria was the third of 6 siblings: Cherubina, Marianella, Ricardo, Maximiliano, and Jose Luis, and like any normal girl, she ate a quick breakfast, kissed her father, Maximo, and her mother, Concepcion, and set off for her school, which was located a few minutes away from her home. It is located on Luis Marin Street, in the Palomares Sureste area in the city of Valikas. But Maria, the active and cheerful girl, never knew that her life would turn upside down on this day. At school, the young woman found herself in a free class after one of the teachers was absent, so she took out a book from her bag and began to look at it intently. A few moments passed and Maria found herself surrounded by 2 of her friends, and all she understood was that she had to go immediately to the school bathrooms. Indeed, without a long debate, Maria headed with her 2 friends to where they wanted to, only to discover later that it was an exciting invitation to play Ouija. Since Maria had played this game many times before and had become experienced with it, she did not mind at all repeating the attempt, and even took the helm, as they say, on the board. Ouija appeared in front of her, and one of her friends had recently lost a friend of hers and wanted to contact him and check on his condition, and how he was doing there in the other world. Without further delay, the 3 friends sit around the usual Ouija board engraved with numbers and letters of the alphabet, and then place their index fingers on a glass that they use as a planchetto. The session begins and they close their eyes, and begin asking questions waiting for someone to answer. But unfortunately, that session was interrupted because the teacher, Dolores Molina, entered the bathrooms to find her 3 students forming a strange circle around the Ouija board, which aroused her anger at them and prompted her to pull out the board and break it. Of course, the matter was not without expressions of reprimands. Meanwhile, none of them were paying attention to the strange thing happening next to them. The cup was filled with thick smoke that appeared out of nowhere, and suddenly that cup exploded, shattering into scattered pieces. Unfortunately, that smoke entered Maria's nose. This happened in the presence of the teacher and both of her friends, witnesses to the beginning of a terrifying nightmare that would bring woe to her life. As a result of that Ouija session, Maria experienced a sudden change in her behavior. Her relationship with her family deteriorated significantly, to the point that she attempted to assault her brothers and parents several times. She began to seem very sensitive and quick to anger. Perhaps this behavior was a result of her lack of sleep at night. According to her family, Maria did not sleep well after that day at school. She suffered from hallucinations and visions in which a group of dark shadows gathered around her bed, urging her to go with them. Also, sometimes she would utter strange sounds as if they were coming from inside her. According to her mother, Maria would sometimes wander for 15 to 20 minutes and not react to any stimuli around her, and at the end she would let out a long laugh. When asked what was happening to her, she would answer that she was in a long corridor that ended in a hall covered in thick fog, and some voices were calling from it. The evil one. As time passed, her strange symptoms worsened. The tantrums and hallucinations became more violent and became more frequent. Even her sister Marianella, who shared a room with Maria, claims that one night she saw her sister floating as she lay in bed. The rest of the family also witnessed strange phenomena and incidents. One time, Maria went to iron her clothes in the bathroom, and according to her mother, her daughter screamed because she saw a ghostly shadow. Moreover, the iron was working by itself, and this is what the mother confirmed when she examined the iron. It had given off a light indicating it worked even though it was not plugged into an electrical socket, and surprisingly, it was not hot. What happened to the iron was child's play, considering what followed. Suddenly, the bathroom door closed on its own. The father tried to help his wife and daughter open the door, but it was all in vain. Something kept it completely closed. When Maximo was about to kick the door with his foot, everyone watched how the door opened itself smoothly. Returning to Maria, it is natural that the first thing that both father and mother will think about is illness. Perhaps their daughter was sick with some kind of neurological disease, so they took her to several specialists, even up to 4 different medical centers, to find a solution. However, no one was able to give them a clear diagnosis or effective treatment. One doctor speculated that Maria suffered from epilepsy, and she even complied with a treatment regimen as an epileptic patient. But it had no significant effect on her. In addition, her symptoms did not resemble those of epilepsy at all. On the other hand, her mother, Concepcion, had previously suffered from epilepsy for a long time, but she did not have hallucinations or voices, meaning she did not suffer from disorders like those of her daughter. Things continued to get worse. This was clear to the mother, who sat listening to her daughter's strange request. That night, Maria asked her mother not to tell the rest of the family about her imminent death, and when that happened, they must bury her father's picture next to her. What a request! One night in July 1991, Mary suffered one of her most severe seizures. She tried to attack her sister as if she were a rabid animal. Fortunately, Marilania was able to avoid it, and Maria fell to the ground amid violent convulsions. Her eyes were closed and thick foam flowed from her mouth. She quickly lost consciousness. But when she woke up, she claimed she didn't remember anything. Her next day seemed to be normal. That afternoon, she met her friend Pablo to go for a walk. She came home early, then had dinner and went to bed. That night everyone woke up to the sound of her screaming. She had had another seizure, and it seemed to be more powerful than the one the night before. The mother narrates her condition and says, Maria continued for half an hour, shaking violently, holding her head in her hands, and at the same time foam was flowing from her mouth. She was treated at the Gregorio Marañón hospital and had completely lost consciousness, but after 3 hours, that is, at exactly 2 o'clock in the morning on July 14th, the tragedy was complete and Maria died of pulmonary asphyxia caused by convulsions, which is a very strange diagnosis for someone of her age. Forensic pathologists wrote in the death certificate, which was signed by the hospital director, Pedro Cabeza, and chief physician Gregorio Arroyo Arrieta, said that Maria died suddenly and suspiciously. It is worth mentioning that Maria had told her family on the morning of the day she died that she was going to die, but moments later her secrets were revealed and her features changed and even her voice changed. Was Maria the one who prophesied and spoke? Or what? Ricardo, Maria's brother, says that his sister assured him on more than one occasion that she would visit them when she was on the other side, and that they should not worry about her death because she would come back again. After Maria's death and their reluctant attempt to forget her, the family lived a stable and calm period, and slowly began to emerge from the circle of misery that surrounded them following the loss of their daughter, and when they thought that the clouds had already lifted over them, none of them would have realized that the terror had only just begun. At first, the strange phenomena were mild and infrequent, things moving on their own, some doors opening and closing on their own, and one morning Maria's bed was strangely scattered. But the situation began to worsen when, some nights, Concepcion clearly felt a cold hand touching her, and sometimes she would remove the bed sheets from her. There is no doubt for the mother that over the course of a few years following Maria's death, she had been listening. A voice called, "Mom," and it seemed that the source of that voice was the bathroom. Hence, the family came to believe that the source of the strange phenomena that afflicted them was the bathroom next to Stefania's room, which is the same place from which Stefania received those strange communications with what she described as the inhabitants of the other world. Here the family sought the help of a spiritualist who claimed that the bathroom was a multi-dimensional door through which disgruntled spirits entered this world. In fact, the couple was so convinced of that talk that they dispensed with it and closed it permanently. At the same time, none of the family members dared to go to the bathroom alone. They had to be accompanied by another individual every time they had to use the alternative bathroom. Until that moment, it can be said that these phenomena were somewhat bearable. With the passage of time, the family began to adapt and coexist. Perhaps Maria was feeling lonely and wanted someone to comfort her, so she resorted to quarreling with them, to the point that they would leave an empty chair and a plate containing food while they ate. For one of their main meals, the strange thing was that the chair was moving as if someone had actually pulled it to sit. The food remains as it is and is not touched. Things began to take another turn when the family began to notice a terrifying shadow in the hallway of the house, in addition to the sounds of malicious laughter as well. With repetition, Concepcion confirmed that the shadow and sound belonged to her father, who died 5 months before Maria after suffering from senile dementia. Concepcion's relationship with her father was not good. Some financial disputes between the daughter and the father led to the deterioration of their relationship, and it seems that Maria's grandfather harbored hatred for his daughter. It was also said that a few days before his death, he swore that he would make the life of his daughter and her family hell, and it seems that he returned to fulfilling his promise. The phenomena reached a peak and became unbearable when they began to affect the physical safety of the family. Individuals began receiving pushes in an attempt to knock them down the stairs. Their pet cat became aggressive. Most of the time, it seemed as if he was chasing something they could never know. The touching that the mother was subjected to in her sleep turned into an attempt at pulling, and one night the father woke up to the sound of his wife screaming. It seemed as if someone was pulling her by her feet to make her fall off the bed, but when he lit the room more brightly, that pulling completely disappeared. The events continue in its escalating pace. While Concepcion and her son Ricardo were talking around the dining room table, the glass cup suddenly rose from the table and was thrown towards the son's head. Fortunately, the mother had alerted her son at the last moment so that the latter could avoid it, and the glass shards were scattered around him. It is natural for the same terror to creep into the chests of that poor family, and as a result everyone moved their beds to the living room to spend the nights together and protect each other. They also closed the door that connects to the hallway with heavy furniture to isolate themselves. About the crazy ghosts that haunt them. Of course, all these measures were useless. These mysterious entities were able to throw things towards the living room wall from the outside, and also open the doors wide, no matter how heavy they were, to terrorize the entire Gutierrez family. In the hope of salvation and survival, the house became a shrine for spiritualists, charlatans, and those who claimed to be in contact with the other world. Of course, none of their services were out of love and dignity, nor for the sake of God, but were worth thousands of dollars, and the family had to burden themselves with debts to meet their demands. In any case, they were pure fraudsters. They found, in the family's tragic situation, a very easy way to swindle and steal. One of them claimed that a demon called Crapola had taken possession of Maria's body and devoured her soul before she died, and that he had communicated with that demon and told him that the house had become his property. Another claimed that he had a weapon that hunted ghosts, and in fact the family bought that scrap for a large sum before realizing that they had fallen into fraud. November 1992 was particularly tumultuous. One night Marianella and Cherubina saw a faceless creature, a kind of dark shadow crawling across the floor of their room and throwing into the air the things it found in its path. The girls tried to light a small lamp to scare away the creature, but it swung quickly, making it impossible to shine light on it. But when one of them took courage and headed towards the lamp switch in the room, that shadow had disappeared. At that time, both parents saw the horror on their daughters' faces, but they were not able to see the creature until November 19th, when they saw it crawling through the hallway. One night, the family noticed that Ricardo's ball had rolled to them on its own, and because the father wanted to reassure his family, he got on his feet and kicked that ball, but it changed its path halfway while it was hanging in the air without colliding with anything, and it bounced back toward him. According to family testimonies, the shadows or ghosts seemed to want to leave physical evidence of their presence, so they began wearing head coverings, as if they were monks. Concepcion once spread flour in the hallway of the house. The strange thing is that the next day, the footprints of a man's shoe appeared. On another occasion, when the family had left the house empty for a while, they had tied all the doors with ropes. However, when they returned, they saw that all the strong knots of the ropes had been completely untied. They also installed a burglar alarm system, which also went off one day when the house was empty. The family says that most of these phenomena only occur in the dark and begin at 2 o'clock, which is the time of Maria's death. The question now is what was happening to the family real? But did these phenomena even exist? As we mentioned at the beginning, the night of November 19th was the night when enough was enough. After a long series of failed attempts at adaptation, in addition to the barrage of charlatans and spiritualists who, as we also mentioned, were just scammers to make money, Father Maximo saw no last solution except to call the police. The news was vague and incomprehensible to the head of the department, as the presence of a strange, unknown entity is not something the police are usually called for. At first, the police assumed that the father was drunk or under the influence of some kind of drug, so he asked him some questions related to the details of his wedding to his wife. The wife, Concepcion, completely agreed with his answers, but this confirmation alone was not enough to believe the story that the couple told them, so she also listened to the children, who in turn mentioned the same details, especially since everyone caused panic and terror. During the interview with the family, Negri was surprised that the door of the small closet next to him in the living room opened and closed on its own on several occasions. At that moment, four policemen decided to leave the house and go down to the main gate at the bottom, leaving only the inspector, his assistant, and the family inside the house. Inspector Negri began examining the house, especially the doors. Perhaps someone had used some mechanism to make them open and close on their own with the intention of scaring the family, but he did not find anything. Shortly after that, while they were talking about what had happened and continuing the examination, a loud bang was heard on the balcony of the house. It looked like hitting a rock or a pot. The police immediately went out to the balcony to check the cause of the noise, but again they did not find anything. At the same time, while the officer was investigating the balcony noise, a clear screaming sound exploded, and it was undoubtedly the sound of a female screaming. Everyone turned again towards the source of the sound coming from the living room, and there on the table a spot resembling brown slime appeared on the cloth cover above it. The family, in turn, confirmed that that sound was Maria's voice. Inspector Negri asked his assistant to take a sample of that substance, and he left with the family after he began to feel that he was losing his temper, especially since he took out his pistol and fired 3 shots at a strange object that he saw running quickly down the stairs. However, when the assistant returned with the officers to the table to collect in the samples, the material had completely disappeared. During another inspection tour, one of the officers noticed the placement of the cross in one of the rooms and how it had become upside down, as he had previously stood in front of it when they first entered to perform a prayer after the atmosphere of panic he had experienced. Also, the statue of Christ had completely disappeared, even though no one, whether from the police or the family, was there. He didn't come up again. The inspector noticed a tightly locked door hidden behind a closet that was placed inappropriately in a corner. When he asked them to remove the closet and open the door, the family objected, as the door was the bathroom door that they had previously refrained from using, but with the inspector's insistence, the door was opened again. Negri says that he felt so cold that it made him shiver when he went inside. The bathroom was full of things, and when the family was asked about them, they confirmed that they all belonged to Maria, and that she disappeared in a mysterious way, and it did not occur to them that she would be here. As the tightness in Inspector Negri's chest increased, he decided to get out of the bathroom and then immediately called the center, where he said that he was experiencing a series of inexplicable phenomena. All of what was mentioned can be read in detail in the police report, meaning that the incidents were real. If we assume, for the sake of argument, that the Gutierrez family is a bunch of crazy people, would the police be crazy too? The last part of this episode will address the most rumored theories about the cursed house of Valikas, and after that I will leave you the freedom to choose whether to believe or disbelieve, and perhaps you will have a theory of your own that is more reasonable and offer an explanation that the mind can accept and be reassured by. Who knows? As we mentioned, Mary's mother, Concepcion, suffered from epileptic seizures at one time, but she did not hallucinate like Mary. But wait, someone came back from afar. Concepcion's private doctor, who had traveled and left the country in 1990, that is, 2 years before the beginning of the events, returned to reveal shocking facts about his patient Concepcion, whose illness he described as very extreme. The police based their report on Concepcion's normal symptoms on hospital records, but Concepcion had continued treatment for long periods with the doctor before she resorted to the hospital, and it is natural that she will have normal symptoms due to the long treatment that she was undergoing. And from here the theory says that the mother was exaggerating Maria's condition and the events inside the house, and why not? Maybe her madness may have driven her to fabricate events, especially since all the children were young and she could influence their opinions and even make them believe things they had not seen. And let us note that 90% of the stories were from the mother and her children, while the father was content with believing, and perhaps what prompted him to do so was everyone's consensus. There are strange incidents at home, especially if they were planned by a crazy patient. You may be thinking now, so let's assume for the sake of argument that the mother is sick and was able to make things up. What about the police officers? The second theory is considered complementary to the first theory, but it sheds light on the police, specifically on Detective Jose Negri. Returning to Negri's past, we find that he has a long history of loving fame. He loves to present himself as a hero, and he always hoped to become the talk of the media. Well, it's not a crime, nor a robbery, nor anything that constitutes even a small felony, so why don't I take advantage of stupid news about ghosts and spirits infesting a cursed house in Valikas, and make my name shine? In practice, and from this perspective, the matter was completely successful. The name of Jose Negri and Mad was prevalent in the newspapers and news of that time, and this is what is documented, of course. And with regard to the strange events, he must have concocted them with his members, so the matter would not be difficult at all. Thirdly, Maria died due to a strange and sudden symptom that some doctors did not like. Therefore, the body was examined again some time after her death, and indeed the substance carbamazepine was found, which is used to treat epilepsy, but it is very dangerous if it is not given in precise amounts according to the medical prescription. But the mother's condition was she actually uses that drug. The theory here is that the mother, in good faith, gave her daughter a dose of carbamazepine that she was using, but instead of calming Maria down, the dose left her gone forever. To cover this up, everyone was forced to make up a story about shadows, ghosts, and a house of horrors to disavow the incident. All of Marie's friends, in addition to the teacher, agreed that she played Ouija that day, and at the same time they said that Maria was not much different from what one of Maria's friends, who was close to her, said in a television interview years after the incident, that Maria was pleased with the presence of Western movements in the house. That was before the Ouija game, and she adds that one day she told her that a group of strange shadows had been watching her all day. What will happen to the Gutierrez family? Gradually, and for some reason, the phenomena began to disappear little by little, to the point that they reopened the bathroom and used it. Their lives seemed to return to calm, but in the end they abandoned the house and left the neighborhood. Of course, there were new residents of the Gutierrez family home, but they were never exposed to any strange event. It was as bad as it was. Only after a while. Perhaps this period was when symptoms of the disease appeared on her. In the end, what do you think, dear viewer, about this strange story? Could any of the theories be correct? Or did the other world actually play a role in it? If you have another theory of your own, share it with us in the comments.